see you guys in the dark.
Back in January of 2018, it took me a few years and a little therapy to be able to talk about it. I am okay now, and I thought I would share. It's a little long, just buckle up. I was part of a study abroad program in Bangkok. Not long after being there, my fellow students and I went out for a night on the town. After a night of drinking and running amok, we somehow ended up in a back alley illegal strip club. Here is where I think it is important to mention that I am female, and I was the only female in the group that night. I saw things that I will never unsee in the 15 minutes that we were there. It honestly keeps me up at night once in a while. Let's just say that it was pretty obvious that the women did not want to be there. Very quickly, I did not want to be there either. 5 minutes into this really misguided decision, I realized that two guys from my group are talking to a guy in a red polo shirt. Oh man, there are so many guys in red polo shirts scattered throughout the room. None of them look very pleasant either. One of my buddies, I'll call him Jay, came back over to me laughing, points to the red shirt, and says, "Hey, he's trying to get me to sell you to him for $10, American. But I keep telling him that you're worth more than $10. But that's the highest that he will go." I have never noped out of the situation so fast in my entire life, and everyone went with me. I travel a lot, so I did take the opportunity to use this as a learning experience for Jay as to how quickly these situations can go south, and how important it is for me to be on guard in a foreign country. I'm thinking that he learned his lesson. We all got out of there safely, no harm, no foul. I admit that I became a little more withdrawn from the group. Everyone went out partying every night. I went to school. Occasionally I ate out, did some daytime shopping at the markets, or hung out in a high-end spa near the hotel. Two girls joined me on my adventures, and we got a great time overall. Before we could reschedule to return back to the States, my other classmate finally convinced me to go out for a night on the town with them to some strip club. People were eating scorpions on a stick. Some dumb girl from Australia who had joined our group took a hit of gas that they were selling on the street and threw up everywhere. People were packed in elbow to elbow, and there was a lot of rave-style lights and music. Sensory overload, I'll tell you that. I figured that I'm with a group of 20 people from the US and Australia. If there was a time to drink and party in a foreign country, this is definitely the time. So the drinking started, and the party began. When you're drinking, eventually comes the need for the restroom, so I told Jay that I'm going to find one, and that I would be right back. Jay chose that moment to be a diva, started hammering back drinks and demanding everyone's attention. I might have been gone about 10 minutes tops. I come back, everyone is gone. I got the story later that the Aussies left, and the rest of the group had to chase down Jay when he ran off in a drunken display for attention. So I walk over to the entrance of this strip where we are dropped off, and I sit on a picnic table near all the cabs to wait for my group. 2.5 hours have gone by. It's almost 1 a.m., the street is still packed, and I have no one from my group. I'm starting to get a little concerned because I have no idea where we are really. The others had come to this strip club every night, and it was my first time. Okay, as I said, I'm an experienced traveler. I do not have the address to the hotel written down in English, or in Thai, and I don't speak fucking Thai. Luckily, I haven't had a drink in 2.5 hours, so I'm pretty stone cold sober at this point. I have been here long enough to know that taking a tuk-tuk, which is an openly cab-wheeled thing, is much cheaper than taking an actual cab, but not long enough to realize that taking the tuk-tuk at 1 a.m. alone as a female is a bad idea. I show the driver my room key. Oh, the naive child that I was. We negotiate a price, and I hop in. But he goes in the opposite direction from where our cab came in from to drop us off initially. We took a highway to get there, but my tuk-tuk driver is on all residential streets. Then he hits an alley. Okay, I'm on alert right now. He stops. I'm poised, ready to strike should I need to. And next to me on my left, a garage door rolls up, and a group of men just come right out, one of whom is holding a blue purse. I stuck around just long enough to watch him start walking over and unzipping said purse as he moved, and I bolted. I barely shook off the tuk-tuk driver. I just put one foot in front of the other, crying because I couldn't breathe, and thinking to myself that I'm going to die because I couldn't be bothered to go to a gym. I ran until I saw it. A familiar sight of home, a 7-Eleven in the middle of this Thai neighborhood. I'm hysterical as I come through that door like the Kool-Aid man himself. The cashier starts yelling at me to get out in Thai, and I'm yelling in English that my tuk-tuk driver tried to sell me, and that I am not going anywhere. We go at it for a minute or two of me begging him to help me, and this little tiny 4-foot elderly Thai woman comes up to me with an equally tiny grocery cart full of 2-liter bottles of Pepsi. She takes my hand and my room key. She never says a single word to me. She leads me outside, hails me a cab, and has a solid 60-second conversation with the driver, pushes me into the back seat. The scariest part of my entire night, though, was that 15-minute cab ride back to my hotel, not knowing if this little Thai lady had sold me out or sent me home to safety. The cab driver had to stop and ask for directions about 3 minutes from the hotel. That was probably the moment that I knew this was going to affect me mentally. The ride cost me $10, and I tipped him $60, for not selling me into some slave trade. I live in America Latina, and at the time this happened, there was a lapse of time where lots of children were kidnapped at markets or malls, and places like that. So, taking that into account, you can understand this a little bit better. I was 5 or maybe 6 years old when I went to a supermarket with my grandfather. We went alone, and he has always been a very relaxed man. We were buying, and then he told me to stay with the shopping cart, that he's going to go look for something, and then he will come back. So I just stayed there. I must clarify that I've always been a distrustful girl. After a moment, I saw a tall man carrying a little girl. I didn't know the reason, but something in that scene just looked out of place. After seeing that, I just felt awkward and held tighter onto the cart. He looked at me, and something inside me told me that something wasn't okay. So I just walked slowly towards my grandpa, who was a few meters away from where I was. While the man was walking towards me, giving me his hand, in that moment I just said, "Grandpa," and that man ran away. After thinking about this, the thing that disturbs me the most is the fact that if he was there just buying, he wasn't going to feel afraid or something after I called my grandfather, and he would have just continued with his business without caring about me. But the way he just ran away, looking afraid, is the fact that made me remember this, and thinking about what could have happened if I just didn't say anything. Years ago, when I was 25, I lived with, at the time, one of my best friends. Our friendship eventually started to dwindle, so she was rarely home. This night, however, she ended up staying at our place, headed to bed early. I was at a severe time in my life, so I stayed up pretty late, usually watching YouTube and smoking pot. This night was no different, other than except for the fact that my neighbors tried to kidnap me. I'll go ahead and give you some background information on my house and my neighbors. We live in a 3-bedroom house with 2 bedrooms, and the kitchen facing the crazy neighbors. They were a younger couple living in a smaller mill house. They were constantly coming to our door asking for handouts. Normally I'd be happy to help with a neighbor, but they would come over and ask for crazy shit, like for us to fill up an old Mountain Dew bottle with water because theirs got shut off, beer. Once they literally asked me for $1. They would constantly be knocking at our door to ask for help, and when we wouldn't answer, I'd peek through the window to see them either jacking cigarette butts from the ashtray or pressing their eyeballs against the door peephole to see if they could spot us. Anyways, there I was smoking some weed, watching YouTube on my couch, when I heard a knock at the door. I rolled my eyes because I knew exactly who came knocking. It's now 11 p.m. I checked the peephole, and sure enough, the boyfriend was on the porch. Normally I'd just walk away and continue with my life, but he looked like he was in distress. I opened the door to see what it was up. "I just wanted to come over and see if you can film my engagement. I got my girlfriend a ring here in my pocket. I need you to follow me to my backyard and film it for me." Baffled but curious, I told him congratulations and said that I'd be out in a second. I just needed to put on some shoes. I shut the door behind me and locked it. Quickly I ran to the back room that looked out of their backyard. I peeked through the blinds to see the setup. Nothing. It was pitch black and darkness. No sign of decorations or anything like that. Naturally, I woke up my roommate and told her what was going on. Fuck that, she said to me, and we both walked back up to the door after the boyfriend started banging on the door. I looked through the peephole again. I couldn't see anything and was confused all the way up until he pulled his eyeballs away from the peephole. I quickly turned around, put my back up against the door. My roommate came running back to the door from her room, manning 2 wire hangers. We both clung into the hangers and sat up against the door until he finally left. We were so freaked out, but we wanted to make sure that we weren't overreacting. We went out to our back door and hopped into her car so that we could do a drive-by. Slowly we crept in her car and peered into their living room, sitting on the couch, all staring at the wall, was the couple and an older man. We sped off and ended up staying at a friend's house that night. I never answered the door for either of them again. One day I came home from work, and an older lady was parked in their driveway. She walked up to me as I got out of my car and asked if I knew where the neighbors were. I told her that I haven't seen them in a while. She informed me that she was the owner. She told me they were months late on rent and finally came to evict them. She entered the home to find it completely trashed. Needles and garbage everywhere, holes in the walls, shit on the floor. I told her that I was sorry to hear that she had to deal with all of that, but I was happy that they were finally gone. I'm not 100% sure what was going on that night, but I'm glad I didn't follow him back to the backyard. So this happened about 10 years ago when I was in middle school, but I'll never forget this. Me and my 4 or 5 of my neighbor boys were hanging out at the playground. It's located in a more isolated part of town, near a lake. It's about 6 p.m. A car pulls up in the parking lot. We're standing near the playground, which is on a more declined part. That has a fence and a path that bends around up to us. I see someone get out of the passenger side with a pistol in his hand. My friends are all looking at him at this point as well. "Get in the car," he yells up to us. My first thought is, really, dude? How does he expect to get all of us to obey his instructions? What's their plan here? The oldest of us, named Kane, replies to him comedically, high-pitched voice. "Why?" The dude repeated, "Get in the car, now." Kane repeats, "Why?" I looked to see Kane with a very smug face. It was his personality, plus we were all having a good time, so our spirits were high, and I don't think some of us could help but find the situation laughingly ridiculous. The dude with the gun starts to charge up the path towards us, and then turns around, swearing under his breath, getting back into his car, and then drives away. My parents called the police after I told them. I couldn't produce a license plate number for them since it never crossed my mind. Luckily, we were all safe that night. But that encounter with the crazy armed man had my outlook to strangers changed for life. To this day, I always remember to be ready to catch license plate numbers. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.